There's a lot of talk about watches at the moment, and not all of it is positive. I've seen some different thoughts about different things. Some things I agree with, and some I don't. So I thought I'd gather them all up into one place. Here are some of my hot takes on watches, and I don't think you're going to agree with me. The topic I hear about most is by far and away the lack of availability of Rolex. I hear everything from general dissatisfaction to out-and-out conspiracy theories levelled in Rolex's direction. But here's my thought on it. It's not Rolex's fault you can't get a Rolex. Yeah, they make about 1 million watches a year, but since the wider world discovered that buying a Rolex is basically a way to get free money, everyone and their shih tzu decided they wanted one. Can you blame them? If you get allocated a steel Daytona, the protracted outcome is that you go to the Rolex dealer and they hand you a little green bag with 10 grand in it. Sure, there are dealers taking full advantage of that desirability, but Rolex, they're doing things as they've always been done. Alongside cheap champagne and gold chains that could hold a ship's anchor, Richard Mille has become a mainstay of flex life. Hideously expensive and, to many, just plain hideous. They're the watches that have, to many, made a mockery of the whole industry. Thing is, I bet a lot of people thought that about the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak back when it came out in 1972. Big, ugly, and very, very expensive, it changed the way people thought about watches. They weren't timekeepers anymore, they were status symbols, as bold and bright as a mall Christmas tree. Sound familiar? Well, I actually think Richard Mille is at the cutting edge of watchmaking. When the brand first came to be at the end of the 20th century, you should have seen the state of watchmaking. Tag Heuer had stuff like the Link. Patek Philippe made watches small enough to use in a vending machine. Watchmaking was in real danger of becoming irrelevant again, and Richard Mille led the way in fixing that. Talking of Audemars Piguet and the Royal Oak, here's a watch that's been doing a lot of heavy lifting, all by itself. Even Patek Philippe's boss, Thierry Stern, is anxious about it, publicly stating he didn't want the Nautilus to dominate his brand, like the Royal Oak. So here's another hot take I don't think you're going to agree with. I think it's fine for Audemars Piguet to rely on just the Royal Oak. Why not? It's not like Rolex are out there making vastly different watches. They're basically all different versions of the same thing, and the Royal Oak can be too. Simple or complex, thick or thin, steel or gold. You can get it all. And yeah, Audemars Piguet did used to be a maker of fine traditional watches, but then Porsche used to make tractors. Sometimes you've just got to let it go and realise things have moved on. It's good in everything to look back, to learn lessons and appreciate innovation. For a lot of watch brands, its heritage is right up there as the #1 reason you should consider buying its watches. Here's my view. Heritage is overrated. I'm not saying take it out and throw it in the trash, but that it's just not all that. If there's a new watchmaker making amazing watches that are as good, if not better, than a ye olde brand, it's not the new brand's fault it doesn't have a history to back it all up. That's luck, really. And to double down on that point, having a genius watchmaker with an artistic vision who's alive and well today, who you can see and speak to, surely trumps a watchmaker who's been in the ground for the better part of a century. It's almost a meme at this point, poking fun at the watchmaker named after a porthole, Hublot. And Hublot have made some questionable business decisions in the past that have rightly led to collectors questioning the brand's value. But you know what? There's nothing fundamentally wrong with Hublot. It's not like the pushers fall off or the watches don't tell time. They're solidly built, backed up with a great warranty and, in most cases, uniquely styled. Do they offer the best value for money? No, of course not. But pointing that out in a world where we'll casually ignore the time that comes for free on our iPhones is more steeped in irony than Isambard Kingdom Brunel. If you want a Hublot, regardless of whether or not you have a medically diagnosed taste deficiency, you are welcome to have one, and there's no earthly reason why you shouldn't. Ask anyone in the world what watch brand they think is the most high-end, and they might mention Patek Philippe, perhaps even Audemars Piguet. They'll definitely mention Rolex, and I'll tell you what, they're wrong. Rolex isn't high-end. They can make them out of gold, they can cover them in diamonds, they can roll them in glitter if they like. It doesn't stop them from being pretty basic watches. With the exception of the Skydweller and maybe the Yachtmaster 2, Rolex watches are simple, rudimentary things. They're solidly built for sure, but so is a Toyota. The price most certainly doesn't align with the quality on offer, and really that's all down to the utterly magnificent job Rolex has done in building brand. To me, Rolex is a mid-tier brand built ruggedly and reliably that will serve you well your entire life. But to compete with the big boys, it's a long way off. When it comes to advice on buying watches, a common stance is that choice should be made without influence from the big bad word that hangs over watchmaking: investment. Buy the watch you love is the advice. Don't buy to invest. In theory, I agree with that. It's a shame to compromise on the things you like because of sensible, boring factors like not losing all your money. That's great if your magic money tree is in full bloom, but otherwise, it's just not realistic to ignore the realities of finance. I'm sure a lot of people would like an Alfa Romeo, but the idea of crippling unreliability puts them off. Likewise, when factoring the decision between two watches, if one of them is less likely to take a dump all over your bank account, it's impossible not to let that sway your decision. Being able to enjoy amazing watches knowing that you can get your money back and more offers an enjoyment factor that can outweigh literally everything else. Peace of mind. Once upon a time, it was all about British watchmaking and French. Then it was American. These days, it's Swiss, with Germany and Japan nipping at its heels. But the nation we should really be keeping an eye on when it comes to watchmaking excellence: China. That might sound ridiculous since China is the home to all things fake, but then again, so was Switzerland once. How better to get good at making something than by copying someone else? That's what the Swiss did until they were good enough to make their own, and now China is good enough to make its own. We're seeing high quality, complex, original designs coming from China now, and the prognosis is interesting. Given that a lot of Swiss watchmaking is already supported by Chinese manufacturing, it really is just a matter of time. There's a catch-22 that's been bugging me for a while, and I'm sure you'll probably be familiar with it. Most watch content creators, myself included, obsess over Rolex. Rolex this, Rolex that, Rolex the other. It's not just because we enjoy talking about Rolex. We do, there's plenty going on over there to keep us occupied. It's because all of you enjoy watching it too. Well, maybe not you exactly, but everyone else does. So we make videos about Rolex because that's what people want. It's nice to make videos about other more niche stuff too, but it's never going to fulfill the audience in the same way because it's just quite simply not as interesting for most people. It's my job to try and find a way to package up the weird and wonderful to make it more appealing, but sometimes people just want a big juicy Rolex video, and that's what I'm going to serve up. The last hot take you won't like that I'm going to lay down on you is one that I've stayed true to since the beginning. There's a lot of strong opinion in this game about what's right and wrong, and sometimes I find myself getting swept up into it too, so I have to stop and remind myself that watches just aren't that important. They're not. They're fun, they're exciting, they come attached to a great community, but are they worth getting into a pickle about? No chance. Life's just too lumpy. So I have to remember, when someone's bought something I just don't like, to bite my tongue and enjoy their happiness with them. After all, it's not a competition to have the best watches. It's a team game to live life to the fullest. Those are my hot takes. Tell me which ones you disagree with and what hot takes you think I'd take umbrage with in return. And please do like and subscribe and tell the next person you see they've got something in their teeth. Goodbye. Still here? Watch this video next.